Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into a pretty stark warning, one that says a 75-year economic cycle is coming to an end. But we're not just going to talk about the problem. We're breaking down a concrete plan to navigate what could be coming next. So, the source material kicks things off with a very specific and kind of urgent number. 18 months. That's the window it claims we have to get our portfolios in order for what it calls a massive transfer of wealth, from those who are unprepared to those who are. It's a really bold claim with a very tight timeline. And really, this is the core question we're looking at today. This isn't about trying to get rich overnight. It's about protecting what you've already worked so hard for. So we're going to move from understanding the big historical pattern at play to a clear, actionable solution that you can actually implement. To really get why there's so much urgency behind that 18-month figure, we've got to look past the normal recessions that we're all kind of used to. We need to understand the much bigger machine that's working underneath it all. And this is what the source calls the long-term debt cycle. Think of it like a giant slow-moving wave that builds up over generations. It's not like the 5 to 8 year business cycles we hear about on the news. No, this one ends in a fundamental reset of the entire financial system. And historically, that kind of reset absolutely crushes the value of paper assets, stocks, bonds, while rewarding people who hold tangible, real-world things. Now, this timeline, this is where it gets really interesting, because it puts our current moment into some pretty stark historical context. The argument here is that we are not in a normal recession. Instead, we're in stage 7 of an 8-stage pattern, a pattern that last played out during the Great Depression. And stage 7 is usually marked by massive money printing and social unrest, right before the final reset stage. And what's fueling the end of the cycle? Well, according to the source, it's this number, which is almost hard to comprehend. Over $90 trillion. That's the total U.S. debt. Government, corporate, and all of us, consumers. It's just an unsustainable amount of weight, which suggests the current cycle is hitting its mathematical limit. But look, a number that big can feel totally abstract, right? So let's bring it down to the human level. The source material does a great job of this by telling the story of a man named Richard. It shows the very real cost of just following conventional advice when the basic rules of the game are changing. So, meet Richard. This guy did everything right according to the standard playbook. He was a disciplined saver, he worked with a big, fancy wealth management firm, and he totally trusted the experts who told him, "Don't worry, diversification will protect you." And the result? The collapse was just stunningly fast. In only 18 months, Richard's retirement portfolio was literally cut in half. The wealth he had spent 3 decades building was just decimated, and it forced him to keep working deep into his 70s. This quote from another story in the source material, it really hits home. The ultimate cost isn't just a number on a statement, is it? It's the loss of time, it's the loss of peace of mind, and all the stress it puts on families. The stakes here are incredibly high. Okay, so if the traditional stock and bond portfolios are so vulnerable, what actually survives something like this? The analysis doesn't just leave us with the problem. It outlines a very specific 4-part portfolio that's designed not for crazy growth, but for wealth preservation through one of these cycle resets. And this is what that defensive core looks like. Just notice the focus here. Tangible assets, businesses that can actually handle inflation, and having cash ready for opportunities. The goal is simple, to be on the right side of that wealth transfer we talked about. The first pillar is physical precious metals. And I gotta stress the key word here, physical. The source really warns against paper gold like ETFs. They represent ownership, sure, but they can have what's called counterparty risk in a systemic crisis. Owning the actual metal that you can hold in your hand, that's positioned as the ultimate insurance policy against currency debasement, which often happens at the end of these long debt cycles. Next up, businesses whose products are basically habits, not luxuries. Think about it. When costs go up, a company like Procter & Gamble can raise the price of Tide detergent, and guess what? People still need to do their laundry. This pricing power lets them protect their profits and sometimes even grow them during times of high inflation. Now, this part of the portfolio, it's not about getting rich. It's about having the financial ammunition to make a move. When markets are panicking and everybody is forced to sell, cash becomes king. This dry powder is what lets you swoop in and buy quality assets at fire sale prices. And the final piece of the puzzle is tangible assets that actually produce something real. The source puts it perfectly. You can't print farmland. These assets, the ones that provide essential things like food and shelter, they tend to hold their value and keep generating income even when paper currencies are losing theirs. All right, so building this defensive portfolio is really only half the strategy. The other half is plugging the common leaks that systematically drain your capital, often without you even noticing, preventing you from ever building a strong financial base to begin with. This is just a perfect example. Buying a new car isn't just a purchase, it's a trade. You're trading a rapidly depreciating item for what could have been over $250,000 in future wealth. That opportunity cost, that's the silent killer of wealth right there. And the source points out 4 other common ways our wealth just disappears. First, taking on way too much house. Buying the biggest place the bank will approve, which turns your home into a financial anchor. Second is status spending, buying stuff to look wealthy instead of investing to become wealthy. Third, all those small, unconscious purchases, the daily coffee, the lunch out, that just bleed you dry over time. And finally, my favorite, the forgotten subscriptions. The advice here is simple. Do a quarterly audit. Go through every single recurring charge. If you're not getting real value from it, cancel it. That is literally found money you can put to work. Okay, so that's a lot of information. The big question is, how do you actually move from just understanding all this to taking real action? Well, the source provides a concrete step-by-step plan to reposition your portfolio over the next 6 months, all without trying to perfectly time the market. And here's that plan. It starts this week by getting rid of the most vulnerable stuff. Then, month by month, you gradually and calmly build up your positions in those 4 defensive categories. This whole systematic approach is designed to be emotionally manageable. It helps you avoid the stress of trying to make one giant all-or-nothing decision. And the source material leaves us with this final, pretty provocative thought. It frames this whole decision not as just one of many options, but as a critical choice, one with very clear consequences down the road. Whether this cycle ends in 18 months or takes longer, the principles of owning real value and avoiding those financial leaks, they're timeless. And the choice, as the source makes very clear, is yours.